For Sunday, November 18th, you found the Georgia gang. It's having our agenda today. Will it be Governor Brian Kemp? Amazon in Georgia is a big bust. And in Fulton County, budget follies coming home to roost. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia gang starts now.
And we're glad you could be with us on this Sunday before Thanksgiving. Another busy week in Georgia politics. And we will let Lori Geary of the Georgia gang start us off.
Well, Dick, we have some breaking news on the governor's race that we'll get to in just a few moments. But first, the numbers have held in Brian Kemp's favor. Stacey Abrams would need another 17,000 votes to force a runoff. Once again, the focus of this race turned to the courts.
We want every single vote to be counted here in Georgia.
It was a week full of lawsuits filed by both Democrats and Republicans in the race for Georgia's governor. Attorneys for the Stacey Abrams campaign argued all absentee and provisional ballots that were rejected for insufficient information should be counted. They also said people who voted in a county where they were not registered should have their provisional ballots counted. A federal judge denied a request to extend the deadline to tally all ballots. The Abrams camp contends 25,000 votes could still be out there to trigger a runoff.
The Secretary of State, Brian Kemp, owes voters an explanation, not just words or a press conference or a paper release from his campaign.
Meanwhile, Republican Brian Kemp continues his transition from Secretary of State to governor. His campaign maintains there are only about 20,000 ballots that could still be out there and offered up this explanation.
Even if she got 100% of those votes, we still win.
The Abrams camp maintains this is not just about her, it's about the integrity of elections. The state Republican Party fired back, saying this is an attempt to silence almost 2 million voters who chose Brian Kemp for governor.
Well, thank you, Lori. And we do have that breaking news you mentioned. We are under the impression that a team of lawyers for Stacey Kemp will go to the Georgia, Stacey Abrams will go to the, we've been doing this too long. Stacey Abrams will go to the Georgia Supreme Court to look for a revote in the election, Phil, a complete do-over.
Well, this is a grotesque and irresponsible last-minute ploy of desperation by the Abrams camp and her lawyers. I've talked to a lot of lawyers of different stripes, and they all say the case law is not
Maybe they all should be wearing stripes.
Well, the case law is not there, and you have a high bar to really prove that there's fraud or so-called suppression. And as Lori pointed out, the math is not there, and this is just a waste of time. But probably to gin things up for the December 4th runoff, which they want, obviously, John Barrow to be Secretary of State on the Democratic ticket. So part of this is just a propaganda move, too.
But Alexis, you have a different view of this. You think the votes are out there.
Well, the votes could be out there for sure. But I also think that she is representing her base and her constituency that wants her to represent their right to have their votes counted and make sure that they're counted properly, as well as the long contention that she's had with Brian Kemp over voter suppression and accusing him of purging voters because they didn't vote as often as he thought they should. And I think that she's just carrying the mantle for her position on principle.
Lori, I think there would be a temptation, if I were Brian Kemp, to turn the tables on Stacey Abrams to this extent. She made $1 million heading up nonprofits that registered voters all over the state. And many of them were done by commission workers. And those applications were, in many cases, rushed, fraudulent, what have you. And we've gone, remember we had the 53,000 applications for absentee ballots, or registrations, that were not accepted. I'd be tempted to turn the tables.
This is a high legal bar, as Phil mentioned. It's unprecedented in Georgia. It's never been done before. And Alexis, you mentioned that she's firing up her base, and she is. And Stacey Abrams also has the support now of Washington Democrats who are saying, make Georgia count. And there are ads now that we're seeing. So, but I wonder, it is a fine line, I think, when you become a sore loser or you just want to fire up your base. And I think, she's such a great candidate, right? She was able to get so many Democratic votes that people are now talking about her for 2020 to challenge Senator David Perdue. So I think she's really got to walk this fine line because it could be a losing strategy because the legal precedence is so high.
Well, and Phil, this, Lori mentions that she's backed by Washington Democrats, but this is all part and parcel of the Florida effort in the Senate race and the governor race there too. They just won't stop trying to destroy faith in the election system.
Well, I agree. They're trying to delegitimize Brian Kemp, just like they try to do in Florida and also with the president. And I think, Alexis, you face the facts that as of Friday, every county in Georgia certified their election results. The big Democrat counties locally purge voters per the law. Kathy Cox, the Democrat Secretary of State, purged voters. This is a bogus argument. Secretaries of State are required to purge voters that haven't voted after several cycles. And I think, to Lori's point, I think Stacey Abrams has really losing the support of some of the moderates, the swing voters, the independents that she fooled into voting for on November 6th with her moderate stance. This is far too radical. Even prominent Democrats like former Congressman Buddy Darden are coming out as we tape and say she needs to concede. The votes aren't there.
Well, I disagree with your characterization of her behavior and the candidacy. I think she is standing strong for her supporters and making those votes count. I mean, she had almost 2 million voters as well. And so the state is clearly divided.
But I think you're talking about 17,000 votes. It's not like...
To get into the runoff.
Right, to even get into a runoff.
And
it's not like you're talking about the Woodall race where it's just a couple hundred. I mean, to find 17,000 outstanding ballots, I think is tough to prove in Georgia, especially once the counties have certified.
And here's the risk of ridicule. When people start saying, the Democrats are running commercials paid for by the Georgia Democratic Party that says every vote counts.
Yes.
Okay, well, the risk of ridicule comes when the viewer's response is, you mean make every illegal vote count? Well, I mean, when that's the reaction I've heard.
But that's
the legal votes have been counted. What are we talking about?
That's opposition response. Her supporters are not saying that at all. They're making sure that every vote counts, and I think they feel like that is restoring their faith in having.
Even the Democrat counties, DeKalb County, Fulton County, they threw out these bad provisional ballots.
That's right, and then they were ordered by the federal court to restore them.
Only on a birth date.
Well, I'm just saying they certified before that last order to recount.
But all of these, the Democrat counties, along with the other counties, just threw out thousands of these fake provisional ballots.
They weren't fake.
Well, some of them were cast by illegal aliens. Some of them had phony addresses. Yeah, they're fake.
Let me shift our emphasis a little bit. Phil, was your neighborhood troubled by the violent and angry protests in Sandy Springs and Roswell and Dunwoody over Republican candidates losing?
You know, I was ready to see my neighbors overturn cars and riot and loot after the loss of Karen Handel, but no, I didn't see any Republicans.
Well, now that's a gross exaggeration on my part, but I want to make a point. Watching at the state capitol and seeing Democratic legislators arrayed on the steps of the rotunda, chanting like it's a football game or a civil rights rally, and then having chaos on the floor of the Capitol, inside the building. And the state police called upon to arrest 15 people, including State Senator Nikema Williams. This doesn't make the Abrams campaign look good in my view either. We don't want protests at the Capitol. We want leaders in government.
Well, we want votes to count, too. We're trying to restore faith in the ballot.
Why don't you march outside the Capitol like everybody does, or in Liberty Plaza?
Well, I'm so sorry that our protest annoys you.
Well, you know
That's what the whole point of protest is, honey.
Senator Nikema Williams has a wonderful bully pulpit. She can speak according to the rules of the legislature anytime she wants, if she wants to speak out.
Well, I'm sure she does, and that's what she did.
Well, I mean, there are protests that go on. I was covered the state capitol for 19 years, so I know that there are protests that go on inside. So that's probably not the point. I think the point is, should Senator Nikema Williams has been arrested. I think that's more of the point that we're trying to get to.
And the governor didn't offer her a lot of sympathy. All he said was that he hopes law enforcement does its job. That tells me that she's not going to get a lot of sympathy on this arrangement. I just don't like chanting and all that stuff in the state capitol. It's a place of, it's a beautiful place. It's a place for deliberation of policy and backroom deals. Oh no, just, you know. But anyway, all right, we got to get out. When we come back, speaking of the state capitol, hey, there's a special session underway. Delta, are you listening? Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
So while all this was playing out in the courts and in the election offices of the many counties around metro Atlanta, there is in fact a special session of the General Assembly underway under the Gold Dome at the state capitol. And the governor, of course, calls the tune on special sessions. And already in just 2 days, the House has passed the agricultural relief bill, $270 million, Lori, sorely needed. The pictures over and over again of the crop damage, the pecan crop, the cotton crop, and I'd really thought about the timber crop,
Right.
which trees take a while to grow,
Right.
and that was a devastating loss. Nothing unusual about this. I mean, they're going to pass the aid. They advance the aid to the people before the feds pay off.
Right, it's a $270 million package. I think the pecan farmers were saying that they lost $600 million this year. That's tough to recoup. So I think that this is a reminder. We kind of, with the governor's race going on and all of the elections, we forgot about South Georgia. We don't see a lot of the news coverage focusing on South Georgia when they desperately need the help.
Yeah.
That's right. There's still a lot of cleanup to be done. Just the pecan crop, we were #1 in the nation, and then now it would take 10 years for the trees to grow back and to recover. I am glad to see that some of they started to try to put on non-germane bills to give money out to favored special interests, and that was pulled back. Now, the session hadn't finished yet as we tape. But
it looks like they will restore funds to Delta Airlines in the form of doing away with the tax on jet fuel.
Yeah, for a $6 billion industry, they get a tax break. But it sailed through the House, I think, 1 vote against it, and then it goes to the Senate later.
Right.
Do you wonder, Phil or Lori or Alexis, if the Delta tax break is tied to the proposal for an airport authority to remove the airport from the direct supervision of the city of Atlanta and the years of alleged corruption? Well, actually not a lot of alleged, there was just corruption. I mean, I've heard that this might be an agreement in which Delta says, we won't fight you on an airport authority.
I've never heard that. You may have some sources I don't, but all I know is Delta makes that great, I don't know, what is it, $6 billion or something profit every year.
And
Delta
the
has,
fuel tax is chump change.
Yeah, it's $47 million or something like that through July.
Well, and it's not just Delta, it's all airlines. So not just Delta gets that break, but all airlines would get that break. And also Delta has been on the record as saying they like having Atlanta be in charge of the airport management. So I don't think there is a deal there.
And I haven't heard that about the deal because they've had this tax break before. So it's not like that this is something new. And we say Delta because they're the ones that will reap the benefits the most from this.
But I have heard that, and I don't know the extent of it.
Right.
One last thing about Hartsfield, moving on. It leads the nation in gun confiscations. Is that something to be proud of?
I think so.
I don't think so.
Well, if we didn't have the guns, they wouldn't have to take them, but I'm glad they're taking them.
But
well, I'm glad they're finding them, so I thank goodness for the TSA.
How dumb do you have to be to have a gun in your carry-on bag?
And forget.
At an airport, huh?
And forget.
And forget, yeah,
It's
amazing.
Georgia, honey.
All right, we spent the better part of a year talking about Amazon. It turned out to be a big bust for Atlanta, for Georgia. But it's going, for those of you who don't know, it's going to Crystal City, which is a part of Arlington, Virginia, and Long Island City, which is a decrepit part of the borough of Queens across the river from Manhattan and New York. 25,000 jobs each. And we also got dissed on a regional center. Nashville is going to get about 5,000 jobs. I thought the best part of it was the revelation of what Georgia offered Amazon, Lori. That was fun.
It wasn't just the tax breaks, but it was kind of these goodies, you know, a MARTA car.
A MARTA car.
A MARTA car, and also their own free parking spaces at Hartsfield-Jackson, and also their own kind of corporate suite. So I think if I were
Corporate
UPS,
lounge,
at the lounge, right?
Yeah, a whole lounge.
I think if I were, you know, UPS or Home Depot, I might say, hey, where's our MARTA car or our lounge?
They might already have it.
Well, I have to laugh too, and I was kind of shocked at some of this stuff. I have great respect for our economic team and the Department of Economic Development. They do great work. I think we dodged a bullet. And if you look at the Wall Street Journal editorial last Thursday, how New York got ripped off and how Crystal City, Virginia got ripped off, the taxpayers ripped off by Amazon, we may have dodged a bullet. I don't know what else was promised, but that was bad enough, some of those perks.
Well, the economic development team got creative, right? And they had to with trying to compete with and try to get somebody like Amazon here. But they do an outstanding job and have always been recruiting jobs here to Georgia.
Well, and one of the other things that people noted in seeing all those 200 plus cities vying for this, Amazon got all this information about these cities, and they can use those to do to their own exploitation of capitalism and whatever they want to do with it.
A serious question to wrap it up. New York's paying in subsidies $78,000 per job that's going into Queens.
And I think we would have paid $5,300 per job.
Yeah, and so the serious question to me is, what happens to CIM Realty and the Gulch? That project is proposed and signed off on now by the city.
Yes.
It's massive. My own personal thought has always been it was a play for Amazon. There's nothing else that big. What happens to that? I don't know the answer.
Well, they're going to proceed, obviously, with the city council vote. But you know, what if there's a, God forbid, a recession? What if all of a sudden construction stops? What if all of a sudden in a new mayoral administration they have second thoughts? So who knows what the future holds?
Well, no doubt CIM has done some massive research on attracting new business to Georgia.
Sure.
And even Governor Deal said, look, we will go on even if we don't get Amazon.
But they need that giant gouge of taxpayers' money.
Well, we got to get out, but I just think, you know, Amazon almost seemed ready-made. And by the way, now that we know, that wasn't the only place that the state was showcasing. There were several others.
It was interesting, Dobbins Air Base in Cobb County. That was interesting.
But it's not to be. Okay, when we come back, we'll get into some more city policy. We're sort of back to the hand of Kasim Reed reaching back into the administration of Keisha Lance Bottoms. Not a good look. Stay with us.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
It's too bad Theron Johnson can't be with us this week. He's traveling because I'd like to have put this question to him. But good reporting this week shows us that former city councilman in Atlanta, Kwanzaa Hall, who had endorsed Mayor Bottoms after he lost in the mayor's race, had been on the Atlanta payroll since January 2nd, signed on by an official of the Kasim Reed administration for a job that paid $137,000 a year. Problem number one, it's not legal for council people to serve until they've been out of office for 1 year. Interpretation, Alexis?
Well, like you said,
I'm sorry to put it to you, but...
Well, the long arm of the former mayor reached forward, as you suggested. Our own current mayor, Mayor Bottoms, says that she did not know anything about it. But it was done she didn't do it, and it was done before she took over, that he was hired before she became
But he is
mayor.
back on the city payroll now.
Well, yeah, but I think that's open to a matter of interpretation, too, because she says that the Invest Atlanta group, where he works now, is not a part of the city technically.
Lori, I think the city charter describes Invest Atlanta under its former name, as an arm of government.
And first of all, Kwanzaa Hall does a lot for the community, right? I've been to inner city youth charity events that he's shown up for. I don't want to take that away from him, but this is outrageous. When you're talking about Invest Atlanta, I believe he was a part of city council that voted to create this position in the
Yes, he did.
Yes, he was.
In the first place. So to say that it's not a part of the city doesn't jive with me. And also, who did he report to? He was a senior policy advisor. Now we're learning that it was Stephanie Stuckey, who is probably one of the most ethical people I know. And she's saying, I never knew. He didn't have an office here. He didn't have a phone here. This is news to me. Mm-hmm. And so I think this poses even more problems.
Well, that's right. And of course, this is all part of former Mayor Reed's effort to reward the puppets and the sycophants and his allies over the years. And it's a little hard to believe that Mayor Bottoms didn't know anything about this. Good grief. It is outrageous.
Well, I think she made a mistake giving an interview in which she said, I don't know anything about this. She looks silly because, you know, he'd been on the payroll since January 2nd. And in the meantime, she has arranged for I think when the interview was done, they didn't know this, that she had arranged for this other job for Kwanzaa Hall. And I agree with you, Kwanzaa Hall's a good guy. I guess he just needed a paycheck. Now, we've talked about this for 2 years. In Fulton County, the tax digests for 2017 and 2018 have not been approved by the state. It is a process that's not about negotiation, it's about the law. That's what the law says. And all 159 counties have to have their digests approved. So if they're not approved, Fulton might have to rebill you two for your property taxes, not you, not me, because we're not in Fulton County. But this is a mess. We anticipated this a year ago. What are the chances that they're going to get off the hook, Phil?
Well, just for longtime viewers know that the Fulton County Commission has screwed this up. The assessor's office has been, you used the word mess, that's been a mess for years. You remember they had to fire the assessor a while back and it got a new one in. And I don't know about you, Alexis, but I always appeal every year, and that's always saves the taxpayer, because a lot of times if it's these neighborhoods were way out of kilter, dozens of neighborhoods. So you're right, Dick. It's got to get straightened out again. This is 2 years in a row now, and so I just hope everybody is appealed so they can get a break.
Well, the Fulton County guys are saying, well, if you do this, it's chaos. But I think the law says you have to do this.
That's right.
Yes.
That's
So
exactly
you
right.
were one of 40,000 people who appealed in Fulton County.
Yeah,
So-
he's the one. He clogged the system.
Caused this amount.
You clogged the system,
And
Phil.
rightly so. That's our right. Yeah, they're ripping us
Well,
off.
I'm just glad I live in DeKalb.
Well,
Runoffs,
Hope they
we
get
didn't
it
really
fixed.
get to them. Let's talk about them briefly. We have, as we mentioned, John Barrow, the Democrat, in a runoff with Brad Raffensperger, the former Republican legislator from North Fulton.
December 4th. That's a
December
big
4th.
date.
Which
Good
we're not
deal.
talking about because of the governor's race, so it's
Right.
not getting a lot of attention.
And I don't know how the candidates could possibly campaign in that atmosphere. And then the other runoff is Lindy Miller, a promising young Democrat, against the incumbent Republican Chuck Eaton. Lindy Miller had a television presence during the campaign.
public service.
What do you think? I mean,
Well, they
can they get their
can't-
message out? They get the money?
They can't run TV ads. The TV stations are not accepting ads until the votes are certified from the Georgia election. So the longer the delay, the longer we don't see ads from the runoffs.
And that's a good point. They've got to do retail politics, both all of the candidates, and get out there. Interesting note on Chuck Eaton, though, the Public Service Commissioner. It's very rare for a Republican to be endorsed by the union over at Plant Vogel. They all want to keep working, and
Sure.
so they're all for this Republican, which actually hurts the Democrat.
All right, we'll talk
Although
more about
she's
the
come on
runoffs next
strong.
week. We're out of time on that segment, so when we come back, we will give you winners and losers, and we'll wish you a happy Thanksgiving. We'll do all the nice stuff. Come back.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And we will begin winners and losers with you, Philip.
Okay, well, you know, my loser has got to be Stacey Abrams with this last-minute desperate attempt. She's lost. The math isn't with her. I've got a winner, though, and a loser in the state legislature. It was very interesting to me that when they did the leadership votes in the Republican Senate caucus, that Bill Cowsert, the Senate Majority Leader, actually lost his position. Now, Bill Cowsert is the brother-in-law of Governor-elect Brian Kemp, and he lost to Mike Duggan, who's now the winner, now the Senate Majority Leader. And I do have to do a shout-out. I like to do this occasionally with charities in Georgia. Camp Kudzu is a great charitable organization. They have camps for kids that are suffering from type 1 diabetes. They raised over $230,000 this past week in Atlanta, so a shout-out to them.
Lori.
I don't have any losers this week. It's around Thanksgiving. I just feel bad. So my big winner this week is Jocelyn Baker. She was named the CEO of the Grady Health Foundation. She's very well respected. She's worked at the Georgia Chamber. She worked for Governor Barnes, and so a big congratulations to
Is
her.
she the one from MARTA, too?
Yes.
Yes, we remember Jocelyn from MARTA.
Right.
Okay. Good for her. I didn't know that. Good for her. How about you, Alexis?
I'm going to salute Mark and Judith Taylor and Doug Shipman. They were honored this past week by the Anti-Defamation League.
Mark Taylor, as in the guy who was lieutenant governor?
No.
Oh.
Mark Taylor, as in the entrepreneur, real estate developer, commercial, local philanthropist.
Okay. All right.
And also, I want to recognize the Press Club Hall of Fame winners. They're inducting.
4 of us.
No.
Oh, okay.
But Morse Diggs from Fox 5 is being
good
inducted.
For Morse.
Also, who'd I say? Mike Lukovich of the AJC, and Amanda Davis posthumously, as well as Christiane Amanpour of CNN.
All right. And I want to talk about the big honors for Atlanta sports personalities. Brian Snitker of the Braves, the manager of the year in the National League. Tata Martino of the United, the coach of the year in MLS. Ronald Acuna, rookie of the year. Big days for Atlanta, unless you're a Falcon fan. See you next week on the Georgia Gang.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.